Hey, welcome to Wine Jam with me, Some Cash, where we look at wines, where you can entertain yourself and you can learn something about wines in the same format, whether that's blind tasting the public to find out what they think of wines, or if to pair wines with movies and see whether that's a better pairing with food. But we sometimes get serious on this channel, and as you can tell from the title of this video, yes, we think, well, I should say, I think this particular wine is a bad bottle of wine. Masion No. 9 is a project from Post Malone, a US rapper known for hits such as Congratulations and Psycho. He's collaborated with this rosé with Dr. Dre and James Morrissey. He has put his own artwork, as you can see, on the front of the bottle, and has also stated that he sampled around 50 odd wines to get to this particular rosé that he liked. Not much is known more than that on the actual website, so I got in a bit more deeper on the actual wine itself. He does, however, state that this particular wine is a rosé for when you want to get a little fancy. Well, we're going to see if this is a fancy rosé from France. The reason that I think that this is a bad bottle of wine is a bit complicated. You see, it has a bit of a story about what goes on with this wine. Originally, I actually didn't know anything about the wine. It was because I had actually come across quite a few YouTubers who had basically looked at this particular wine and made a review. It doesn't actually happen that often. It's quite unprecedented that a specific wine is reviewed by so many people. And you will see a playlist at the end of this episode to check them out. What was interesting more was a case of some people had a particular opinion that it was good, some said it was okay, and some said it was bad, very bad, even really good. It kind of swayed back and forth a lot. So for me, I thought, let me dig a bit further and see exactly what this wine is all about. While digging into it, it got more and more interesting. I just kept finding little nuggets of badness. Is that even a thing? I'm not too sure. But what I do know is that this wine is a bad bottle of wine even before I've tasted it. So let me get into the points about this particular wine. Before I get into that, let me put this bottle of wine back in the fridge. You see, there's going to be a bit of a taste off at the end of this video, so wait for that. All right, now that's done, let's get into it. The first point is that this particular bottle has got a plastic covering over the top, and it's a glass bottle stopper. You see, although some people might think that's just a bit naff and that's maybe what they were going for to make it look a bit more fancy, in my opinion, what you're looking for when you're buying particular wines is that they're able to age, or they show some significance, that they've got some ability to kind of age in a long-term process. With this, it is basically clearly saying that this wine is never to be aged, and therefore the wine inside of it is not that great a quality. You see, even with the really big guys, they've even got cork still in their particular wines, or even screw cap, but they're perforated so that they're allowed to still breathe after a period of time. That's what makes me think that if you think of bag in a box, it's kind of the same thing. It's a very sealed wine in a box, and there's no difference really between the two in the way they've done it in this way. So that for me, just on the off from the outside, wasn't a good for show. Number two is made in France. You see on the front of the bottle, it states made in France, but what does that actually mean? You see, I had to go further in to find out what actual denomination of area it was actually seen to be made in. They call it AOC in France, but this one is an IGP, which is a lower level than the AOC. The standards are basically two different standards, and in fact, IGP is a nice ring to what used to be called table wine. In this particular circumstances, it was Mediterranean IGP. And when I looked up what area this covered, wow, it was a lot. In fact, some of the areas are from the Loire to the Rhone to even some places on Corsica. Yeah, that's the island Corsica. So I was really taken back by that. I thought for a wine that was supposedly fancy, as he puts it down as, I'm surprised that it's basically the same denomination you could put to bulk wine. That is, again, wine in a box. In all fairness, I kind of thought, well, maybe they've got it from, specific areas, but it doesn't look like that's really the case. I mean, we have to also consider that this Mediterranean IGP means it allows that wine to basically come from 9,000 hectares. That is a lot of area, and that means it doesn't identify any serious area. I mean, that wine could technically be made anywhere in the world, in my opinion, and they could try and make it taste or be like French wine. It really doesn't have a standard. That's the point. I mean, yeah, okay, we've got some issues already. But let's face it, some celebrity wines do really well. If we think of Sam Neill and Two Paddocks, which he's basically owns his own vineyard site, yeah, it shows up as a very good wine that he's created. But this is where it takes a real turn. You see, when you go on the website, it doesn't really tell you, where the winery is or anything of that sort. I had to dig in deeper, and what I found out was the winemaker Alex Cornu, who's got a well-established sort of background of having a university degree in it, as well as doing rosé on a consistent basis in the Provence, is the winemaker for Maison No. 9. And I mean, we might be thinking that's fair enough, but who does Alex Cornu work for in the majority of his time? Well, he works for Chateau de Bern. Now, Chateau de Bern is actually quite a huge estate. It's almost got 5 estates in its portfolio. And I knew about this because of Life Between the Vines video, who did an interview on him. And that's where he gave me the information about exactly what he was doing there. And in all fairness, Chateau de Bern do make high quality rosés, but they also make a rosé called Romance. Now, Romance is, funny enough, a very similar shaped bottle with a very similar glass stopper with a very similar plastic wrapping around the top of it. And this is where it starts getting really murky for me. You see, I went and looked at the price of Romance, and I went and looked at the price of obviously Maison No. 9, and as you can see between the two, there's quite a bit of a difference. However, I'm speculating here, right? I'm stating that maybe Romance is the same wine as Maison No. 9, but maybe there's a different wine in each one of them, right? Wrong again. You see, I went on wine.com and they showed all the grapes that were in Romance, and it seemed to be exactly correlated with, yes, you guessed it, Maison No. 9. And let me tell you, to have the same proportions of grapes and the amounts is not really that often in happening. So if you look at the price differences between these two, it's shocking. I mean, I know it's not obviously double the amount. Romance is £10 and Maison No. 9 is £17. That's quite a bit of a difference in the sense of, if you can imagine that those two bottles are on a shelf and you saw that the Romance was that much and the Maison No. 9 is that much, and they've got exactly the same thing going on, you have to wonder what you're really paying your money on. And that's a significant difference, considering that in the UK anyways, the average bottle of wine is £6. So you're paying an extra bottle of wine for exactly the same thing. And look, here are the grapes, and look at the percentages. Look at the price, look at the bottle, and tell me that they're not conning people out of this wine. It's shocking to me, really, because I expected at least they would have put some decent wine into this particular product to really show the fact of paying such, a pretty penny on it, to be absolutely fair with you. And on top of that, just to show you the American valuation, which is $16 and $22. Wow. For me, I was kind of taken back. I expected, okay, fine, it comes from a different winery and it's not going to be their own winery. It's going to be, production from somewhere. But to choose that is poor. I mean, there's nothing fancy about it, and there's nothing to congratulate yourself on that. That I can assure you on. The main point of this for everyone is that you need to understand what you're buying into. If you're buying Post Malone's bottle because you like Post Malone, then you have to understand that that's just a nice fancy gimmick that he's decided to market on everybody else. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking he hasn't tasted it, so how does he know? Well, as I said, I put that particular wine in the fridge and I bought a similar wine to it. Now, the point being here is that I bought a wine which was priced at the same value, so that's £17 here, which is a Provence Rosé, which is family owned, and it really cares about what they put into their wine. So we've put that particular wine alongside the Masion No. 9 at the same value, and we're going to clash them together and see in a blind tasting whether I can tell the difference and which one I think is the best one out of the two. So after all of my chat, I might be eating my own words.